everyone, and welcome to Ghouls Night In, the spooky chat show with your best ghoul friends. I'm Penny Snark.
And I'm Midge Munster. And today I am really, really excited to talk about something very weird, a little bit like offbeat from what we normally do here on the pod.
Ooh.
I am assuming that a lot of our listeners are in the same boat as me, and I actually don't know about you, Penny, but we'll find out here in a second. Have been watching the new episodes of Stranger Things. Are you a Stranger Things watcher?
I am. I actually, so we'll say it right now. Sorry if I sound a little different today. I just moved
Oh, yeah.
and have been out of the apartment, even the new apartment after that, all weekend. So I have not watched any of the new season yet, but I am a fan and I do plan to watch.
Penny is actually joining us today from the Upside Down.
Yes,
So that's why she
hello.
sounds. Well, the good news is I promise there are no spoilers for season 4 or really for the show at all in this episode. But I did want to delve in today behind some of the truth behind Stranger Things
Ooh,
and some of the weird conspiracy theories about the US government's past.
always
um,
delightful.
yeah, so uh, believe it or not, Stranger Things is based on true events. Not completely, obviously, there's a lot of fabrication, but based on a real series of CIA experiments that happened anywhere between 1943 and the 1980s. There's actually a few different things we're going to explore here. So I'm very excited because I love a good conspiracy theory.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear about it.
So, in case you have not watched any Stranger Things, I'm just going to lay out a really basic synopsis so that you can follow along. Hopefully, if you don't watch the show, this will pique your interest and you'll be interested in watching it. So, basically, it takes place in Hawkins, Indiana, in the 80s, which is a fictional town, but the general plot is that the government has a lab in Hawkins that is conducting experiments to kind of alter space and time, and they are also using human test subjects, mostly children, to kind of hone practices for psychic warfare during the Cold War.
Dun dun dun
Dun dun dun.
dun.
Sounds really dark. There's a lot of really awesome, like, levity and hilarious moments in the show. It's not all doom and gloom.
Yes, it is a very fun show.
It's a very fun show. Very 80s nostalgia, fun times. But the Duffer Brothers, who are the showrunners and the writers, they did really want to ground the kind of science fiction elements of this show in real life, in science, some way or another. And so their writing was heavily influenced by two separate government projects. The first of which is an actual, like, proven thing that happened. It was the MK Ultra project, which I think a lot
Yes.
of people are familiar with this. So the MK Ultra project was created by the CIA in 1953, and their aim was basically to develop some sort of mind control techniques that would give America an advantage against Russia in the Cold War. So the project, there were declassified CIA documents that came out later that basically made the government look very, very bad. Because they denied that any of this had happened, of course, because why would they say,
Right.
yeah, we did that? But when the documents came forward, it basically confirmed that the CIA had conducted experiments on participants, some unwilling participants, to assess the potential of LSD and other drugs for mind control, to use for, like, information gathering and, unfortunately, psychological torture as well. That program involved more than 150 human experiments, involving different psychedelic drugs, paralytics, and electroshock therapy. Like I said, later it was found that several of the people that were involved in that experiment did not know that they were involved in that experiment.
That's a yikes.
Big yikes, yeah. And though MK Ultra lasted from 1953 until about 1973, 20 years, they
Wow.
were doing this unbeknownst to the world at large. Details from the program didn't become public until, like I said, 1975, when there was a pretty widespread investigation into the CIA and what kind of illicit activities they had been engaging in.
Right. What y'all were getting up to?
Right. So, yeah, at that point, they really couldn't hide anymore. The documents were declassified, and we come to find that, yeah, they had been doing these things. So this project ties into kind of a smaller storyline within Stranger Things, which I believe we learned about in season 1 or 2, that Eleven's mom was meant to basically be one of the MK Ultra experiment participants. And that while she's pregnant, Dr. Brenner is using LSD and sensory deprivation experiments on her, and that kind of accidentally makes 11 with her psychic gifts the way that they are. So that, I mean, I guess it's not a small part of the story. It creates 11.
Yes.
But it's a pretty small chip off the block there of what we're going to get into next, which is, this is where it gets really spicy wild. And I'm just still, I've been in a wormhole for about 2 days reading about this.
Well, drop that spice on me, Paige. I'm ready.
So the second project at work here is widely thought of as being false because there's less evidence to back up that it ever occurred. So we're going to call it a conspiracy theory here.
Mm-hmm.
However, this story is so closely linked to Stranger Things that the show was almost named after this project. The original title of Stranger Things was called Montauk.
Ooh.
And the Montauk Project is the next little bit we're going to talk about here. However, first we need some background context here. So we're going to jump all the way back to 1943. And this, I think, is a pretty well-known conspiracy theory, and honestly kind of ties back to some of our previous Ghost Ship episodes. So in 1943, the government was experimenting with ways to make vessels like undetectable to Nazi and enemy radars. And the vessel they used for that experiment was the Eldrick, which was based in the Philadelphia shipyards. It was a naval destroyer. And that is why, hence, this becomes known as the Philadelphia experiment or the Philadelphia project. And the claim is that the ship was basically fitted with tons of electromagnetic technology, and it worked to hide the ship from radar, but it also worked too well, and the ship became completely invisible and naked to the naked human eye. They could not see it. And then the wild claim is that due to this, the ship was transported through a wormhole basically and dropped 200 yards away at Norfolk. 200 miles, my brain, 200 miles away in Norfolk, Virginia, and then came right back to Philadelphia.
Sure.
Right. Makes perfect sense.
Why not?
So the claims around this story were that then when the government officials boarded the ship to make sure everything was hunky-dory, that the crew members had been fused to the metal of the boat, and some of them had been turned completely inside out by the trip, and that the few survivors were completely driven mad by what had happened.
Did the people get turned invisible too?
Yeah, I mean, supposedly the whole ship disappeared for several seconds. But then the people, the crew member, the surviving crew members who have talked about this are that didn't happen. So it's kind of okay, whatever, right? Wrong. So then
I
In the
just raised
19
my eyebrows so high you can't hear eyebrows. And I was like, whoa, wrong. What next?
wrong. So then basically years later in 1984, this really like crappy B movie titled The Philadelphia Experiment comes out. And it's loosely, the premise is loosely based in this idea with the ship. I think, if I'm not mistaken, that this is like a space film.
Okay.
um but anyway, when this movie releases, a 57-year-old man named Alfred Bielek sees the film and claims that he has intense deja vu from hearing about this Philadelphia experiment, and it unlocks this like huge reserve of memories that he has about his involvement with the Philadelphia experiment, and later something called the Montauk Project that he brings up. He's like, and also I was on this other thing. So he speaks at this conference and says that his real name is Edward Cameron, and that he and his brother Duncan were crew members on the ship, the Eldrick, and claims that basically um, they this is, it's so funny, but so I love this. Basically, his story is that when they went through the wormhole, that they were dropped in Camp Hero 1983 on the Montauk Project.
Oh my.
So that these two kind of portals in 1943 and 1983 are connected. And then his claim is that his memory of his work was wiped using the MK Ultra technology. So parts of this, to me, I'm a little like, it's obviously the wormhole stuff. I'm like, but do I believe that there are probably people who worked on shit for the government that got their memories wiped somehow? Absolutely. Like, weirder. The government's done much weirder stuff. So then the plot thickens. 1992, there is a book, a self-published book released called The Montauk Project: Experiments in Time by a man named Preston Nichols. And while the book is classified as being a science fiction novel, Nichols begins the book by saying that he wrote this book after recovering memories from his time as a researcher on the Montauk Project, and then goes on to give this like really detailed account of the interior of the facilities. Because I mean, the facilities are real. The Camp Hero and the Montauk Air Force Base in New York are real government facilities, right? That exist still to this day. They're still standing. They're very closed down. But he gives like detailed accounts of the interiors and all the procedures and technologies, and then like details numerous paranormal incidents that he claims to have witnessed. So this is where our two storylines here kind of collide and come together. So supposedly, Albert, or his real name is, allegedly Ed Cameron, and his brother Duncan from the ship. Ed claims to have befriended Nichols in the 70s, the author of the book, and that together they built the Montauk chair, which is a like piece of technology very similar to what we see in Stranger Things when Eleven is like wearing kind of those, electrodes on her head and things like that. A piece of tech that like magnifies the psychic abilities of whoever is sat in it. And according to them, Duncan Cameron, Ed's brother, had like substantial psychic abilities. They don't say why. They don't have any. Maybe from being like plopped through a wormhole on a ship in the 40s.
Maybe so.
Might have, who knows? But their claim is that Duncan was so powerful with this that he could sit in the Montauk chair and summon items from thin air. Which what? And then this is also, but this again, big ties to Stranger Things. In the book, Nichols writes The first experiment was called the seeing eye. With a lock of a person's hair or other appropriate object in his hand, Duncan can concentrate on the person and be able to see as if he were seeing through their eyes, hearing through their ears, and feeling through their body. He could actually see through other people anywhere on the planet.
Mm. Very
So,
Professor X.
yeah, totally. Yeah, very X-Men, very Stranger Things, obviously. Uh, yeah, I like I said, I've been an absolute just hole reading about this now for 2 days, and I don't know. I mean, like, I don't like the logical part of my brain is like, absolutely not. But then I'm like, what if? What if in the 80s they developed some kind of crazy technology? I've been thinking a lot too about there's all these movies now coming out with like a multiverse in
Yeah.
the subject matter, and I'm like, there has to be something, right? Like somewhere somebody leaked some kind of information on something the government's working on, and then everyone was like, "Ooh, let's make some cool movies."
Yeah, it's definitely a fertile ground of imagination.
So tying again into where the Duffer Bros kind of get a lot of inspiration from this story, Nichols, the author of the book, also claimed that they this is really sad, honestly, that they picked up like runaway children and experimented on
Mm.
them in the Montauk project, um, and that they were uh, children that like nobody would miss, more or less, like either
Hmm.
runaways or like orphans, children of like parents that had addictions, things like that, where people wouldn't be looking for them. And they in the book they're called the Montauk Boys. So then, of course, this what's it called, like cyclical reasoning or whatever, where conspiracy theorists all just kind of get together and
Yeah.
confirm each other's beliefs. In 2017, a man named Stuart Swerdlow came forward and said that he had been through like therapy and recovered memories of being one of the Montauk boys, and like detailed his account of his time during his like imprisonment in the facility. Um, so you know, crazy is as crazy does. I don't know. But it is interesting because from what I could tell reading these separate accounts, other than this gentleman, the 2017, obviously, like there'd been a lot of information about this out in the world by that point. But the interesting thing to me was that from what I could tell, the first gentleman, Al and or Ed, whatever you want to call him, and Preston Nichols, their information came out right about the same time.
Hmm.
And I do find that interesting that there doesn't seem to be any connection between them until later, much later, when they kind of are like corroborating each other's stories. So that is fascinating to me. That like I do think something was going on at that base. But here's where it gets very, very fun to me. So the project gets shut down supposedly in like 1973, and they talk about in the Montauk chair that Duncan has this incredible ability to summon things or do things. So supposedly Ed and Nichols think like this has gone too far. We are we're experimenting on children, we're ripping holes in time and space, like this is too much. So they are wanting out of the project, they're wanting to get shut down. And Duncan, the extra spicy psychic boy who is hooked into the Montauk chair, apparently at this point becomes angry that people are wanting to leave the experiment and released a monster from his subconscious that took over the base.
Oh shit.
And they describe it as being like a hairy beast. They just call it the beast and everything. and that it materialized outside of the facility, like on the grounds outside, and that it was just like smashing everything, killing everything, and that the only way to destroy it was to get rid of all of the technology uh, in the base. So,
How convenient.
how convenient. But again, also direct correlation to Stranger Things,
Yes.
right? Like having to close the gate, more or less. Um, so yeah, apparently they destroy all the technology. The beast is killed, and then the government comes in, shuts down the project, and fills the base with cement. Now, I will say what is interesting is that to this day, and which to be fair, it is a military building still, but to this day, these buildings are still heavily guarded, which I do think that's very interesting. Um, like I would say there is something that they don't want people to know or see. Um, and I mean, if you didn't have proof that the government was unwittingly like performing LSD things on unsuspecting victims, people would be like, "That's crazy." So again, like it's not complete. Like I don't think a beast was unleashed, but I do think that there's probably a lot of weird things going on as far as like paranormal investigation that we have no idea about. Um, but I also think I can tell by your silence that this is a ghost situation for us again.
A little bit. I mean, I definitely, like, I certainly believe that the government does weird and shady shit that we don't know about. I guess I just generally am not impressed with the efficacy of the government as a whole, and I don't know why
Well,
the secret one would be any better. So I feel like I just don't believe that they actually succeeded in most of these things. I do believe they could have attempted things like this,
right.
but
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
But yeah, that is I honestly I had never some of these because I do love a good conspiracy theory. So like some
Mhm.
of these like the Philadelphia experiment and stuff I had heard of before, but I had never heard about the Montauk Project theory, and I thought it was very interesting. And uh, I think we'll probably start. I'm honestly surprised though, even that I hadn't heard about it. I mean, because Stranger Things has been out for a while now.
Yeah, like I think I do remember the name. Like I think that in the early days I must have seen some like you'll never believe what crazy real thing that Stranger Things was based on, but like I never
Yeah.
like looked super deeply into it. So it is interesting like how direct of an inspiration it is for the show.
Yeah, and apparently like I said, they were originally going to call the show Montauk, and they were sued by like another filmmaker
Yeah.
who had something. He had like a short film called The Montauk Project, and he was like, "You can't do that," and they were like, "Okay," so they moved it to fictional Hawkins, Indiana. Which I mean, we're both Midwesterners. We'll take it. We'll take
Yes.
the even if it is spooky spooky, we'll take it.
Yeah,
Um,
you can get some ookie spookies in the Midwest. I think it's more fun to like have it be kind of like a secret inspiration. Like
yeah,
that makes the show feel like more of its own thing.
yes, agreed. But yeah, so I wanted to take a minute and talk about that, and I have finished what is on Netflix of season 4,
Mm,
and it is absolutely incredible. I just love this show. When it's been gone for what 3 years now, and like you kind of
yeah.
forget how much you love something, and it's been just an absolute pleasure to watch this show again. So, if some of y'all out there are fans, I hope you are enjoying it as much as I am. DM me when you finish. Let's talk about it. Don't DM Penny; she's behind.
No,
She's
not
moving.
yet. Yes,
Do not.
I'm looking forward to seeing it. Hopefully this week I'll get to sit down and watch.
Yes. Uh, do not DM the Ghouls Night In pod because then Penny will see it. But yeah, speaking of that, if you are enjoying the podcast and you want to keep up with us, you can follow us over on Instagram at Ghouls Night In Pod. And if you are really, really liking us, what we would love is for you to pop by wherever you listen to your podcast and leave us a review. That really helps us uh, know what kind of content y'all are enjoying, and it helps us spread the word about the fun and spooky things we're doing over here.
It's true.
And I do believe we have a review to share today, don't we, Penny?
We sure do, Midge. This is a 5-star review on iTunes from Benny Jets, titled Cozy Ghouls.
Oh.
I cannot say enough about how much I love this show. It has everything my spooky heart desires and always feels like I'm chatting with friends about what makes us love the strange and unusual. I can always put
Ooh.
on the newest episode and immediately feel so cozy and happy to be among some spooky souls. Keep up the ghoul work.
Oh, thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Yes, thank you, Benny.
So, yeah, if you want to leave us a review, we might read it right here live on the air.
We sure will. And if you are looking to follow either of us, you can find me at Penny Snark.
And you can find me across all platforms at Midge Munster. And until next time,
Goodbye.
goodbye.